Welcome to the Catholic Sphere. Each week we have a different host and a different focus as we tackle topics important to Catholics around the globe. I'm your host this week, Ryan Penny, and today we're talking about using social media as Catholics in today's world. According to Data Reportal in 2019, there are 2.7 billion smartphone users in the world. And by 2017, according to Pew Research, 69% of adults were using social media compared to just 5% of Americans in 2005. And around 86% of 18 to 29-year-olds use these platforms. Mental health concerns have increased exponentially since the release of smartphones, according to Science Daily. The rate of adolescents reporting symptoms of major depression in a given year increased by 52% from 2005 to 2017. From 2009 to 2017, it grew by 63% in adults ages 18 to 25. So today, to help us maintain a healthy relationship with social media, we're joined by Gus Federle. He is the Media Operations Manager of the Franciscan Friars of the Eternal Word. He joins us all the way from the Friary in Irondale, Alabama. And Jacqueline Bergpile is an editor for Church Pop, and she is with us today from Dallas, Texas. And we're also blessed to be joined by our very own Debbie Cowden, a digital media specialist coming to us all the way from Cincinnati, Ohio. Debbie, you first. Even when you remove the more obvious problems with social media, many would probably say that social media, even at its best, is just a big comparison party. Like, too often, users find themselves comparing their own everyday lives with the highlight reels or the best of other people's lives. Some of the accounts people follow are that of influencers, where their content is carefully curated, staged, if you will, and even centered around selling products. And as the saying goes, comparison is the thief of joy. So my question to you, Debbie, is this: why, as Catholics, should we be spending any amount of time in a place where authentic joy apparently goes to die?
Well, let me just say, there's a lot of good on social media. I happen to follow a lot of really great Catholics who love their faith and who share tips for living out their call to holiness in everyday life. I've discovered great Catholic books on social media, Catholic gifts, decor ideas. I get a lot of my news from social media, just like the huge percentage that you mentioned. I've met complete strangers and prayed for complete strangers and people who have passed away on social media. And I've even made a couple of solid Catholic friends. So it's a place where, although the world is crumbling around us, there still is a lot of good that can come from it. Catholics can come together and realize that we're not alone. And it really can be a good evangelization tool, but we have to make sure that we're using it the right way. And that being said, I'll be the first to tell you that it is a rough place to be sometimes on social media. And if users aren't careful, we can be inundated with these influencers, like you said, who try to sell us products, try to sell us a certain fake lifestyle where everything is perfect, like perfect vacations, perfect lives, perfect families, perfectly clean houses. And we know that that is not real. And most of what you see on social media is not real. So yes, comparison absolutely is the thief of joy. And we're comparing our own everyday messy lives to the highlight reels of these brands. They're trying to make money off of us, whether we realize it or not. And sometimes we can even make it a false god, an obsession. It can affect your mental health, and it can also affect your spiritual health too. So you got to ask yourself, okay, well, with all of this negativity, is it even worth it to be on social media? Because there's a disproportionate amount of negativity, sinful behavior, and it becomes that obsession. And it's also highly addictive. But I'm going to make an argument that it is good for Catholics to be on social media, but the caveat is that it has to have a purpose. So if the purpose is to connect with family and friends, well, that's fine. If the purpose is to be a light to the world, to share the truth, beauty, and goodness of the Catholic faith, and you're going to do it with a focused, disciplined effort, that's even better because it is so easy to slip into these negative habits of mindlessly scrolling, self-medicating, and falling victim to all of the sinfulness that's out there.
I love what you said. You got to be disciplined about it. You have to have a purpose. You have to know what you're about when you get on those platforms. That's really good advice. Follow-up question to you, Debbie. How is EWTN using these platforms to flip this script and help advance the gospel on social media? And what can EWTN viewers do to help with that mission?
EWTN's mission on social media is completely different than anything you're going to see from secular accounts. So we're not trying to sell you a product or a fake lifestyle, a fake form of happiness. We are trying to help you strengthen your faith. And so when you see me on Instagram Reels or Facebook Stories, I am not an influencer by any stretch of the imagination. What EWTN has that these other pages don't have is Jesus Christ. And he is the ultimate source of happiness, the only source of true happiness and peace. And so EWTN is using social media to tell you about our series and documentaries that are going to increase your faith, help you grow in love of your faith. We have prayers and devotionals that we're airing every single day to help you grow in your faith. We offer tons of free ebooks. We have on-demand shows that are free to watch, some that you can rent as well on our on-demand platform. EWTN social media is the go-to place for everything that you need to know about growing in your faith by way of EWTN. We offer a place to stream daily mass and adoration. You have a community of people that you can come together and you can pray with and for. We point you to our online show schedule, our mobile app, religious catalog, where you can purchase holy reminders, but with the interest of growing in faith and surrounding your family with prayer. And all we want to do in terms of influencing is influence you to be holy in your state of life, which is exactly what Mother Angelica strived to do when she founded the network 40 years ago. And by nature of our baptism, for our viewers, we are all called to be missionaries. So if you are baptized, you are called to spread the good news of Jesus Christ to the nations. And we've designed our social media so that our content is really easy to share, our posts, videos, links. And when you are sharing EWTN's posts on your own Facebook, you are, in a sense, a missionary, an EWTN missionary. You can share your posts with your Catholic family and friends, fallen away Catholic family and friends, people who aren't Catholic yet, but they might be interested in the scripture passage and the inspirational message that you share on your page. The Mother Angelica quotes span across all walks of life, all religions. The pro-life posts do the same thing because it speaks to the truth of the human heart. And on social media, we see that there is a lack of truth. We are called to bring that truth. And so we're asking, outside of just sharing our content, you can engage in our posts, comment, leave encouraging messages for other people who are commenting. And also, everything that you post on your own social media is a witness, whether good or bad. So just keep in mind that when you are on social media, people are watching you and they're seeing how you as a Christian, as a Catholic, carry yourself, the photos that you post, the links that you share, and how you interact with other people. So we really encourage you to be that voice of truth in love, be that light to the world that's in darkness, because you can lead a soul to Christ or away from Christ with your witness. We all have this responsibility, and if you don't know where to start by sharing stuff from EWTN's pages.
Awesome answer, Debbie. Gus, more than almost any other layperson, you work very closely with the friars on a regular basis, and they all have smartphones, and to varying degrees they are active on social media, and yet they are all faithful men committed to their vocations and religious life. What lessons can they teach us as far as how to engage with social media in a healthy way?
Thanks for having me on, Ryan. It's a pleasure. And it's been amazing to work with the friars. They have a very unique mission, and that's to evangelize using technology. They can reach the entire world, and they don't even have to travel. But they can teach us so much about how to use social media. And when I first started working there and we were talking, Father Len and I were discussing the kind of posts and content we wanted to have online, they made a point that they didn't want it to be boasting about themselves. They didn't want it to be focused on the friars. They wanted the finger always be pointing to their Catholic faith, to educate people. And that was so different from, our culture now that is all about posting selfies and self-promoting and being an influencer. Just like Debbie said, we wanted to influence people about their faith. And obviously, we need to post pictures of the friars and about the community, news, the latest going on back behind the scenes. And people like seeing what's going on at the friary. It's, you only see them at Mass or on different programs, so people like seeing, what's going on behind the scenes. But the focus is always on evangelizing. It's always on pointing the finger towards our faith and pointing our finger towards the Lord. And we know that social media can be a very negative place. It can be very good. It can also be very negative, especially with politics and news, and especially if you go into the comment sections of some of these pages. It can get nasty. And the friars always want to remain positive online, to be a positive influence. And people thank us for that. They thank the friars for being a positive influence on social media to keep things, positive, because there's so much negativity. But we also have to remember that we're interacting, for the most part, with real people, and we have to be charitable towards them. And we have to treat them like real people. We can't, it's easy to hide behind a screen and act differently. So we want to be authentic, and we want to be positive. But lastly, social media can be very addictive, and you have to know your weaknesses. Some of the friars, they know that it can be distracting, and they will not bring their phones with them into the chapel or during prayer time because they know it's going to be too distracting. Your phone's going to be buzzing, and you're going to want to pick it up and see what's going on. But you have to know your weakness. You have to know when to set it down, put it aside, and take a break.
Excellent answer, Gus. Thank you so much for that. Jacqueline, you made a post on churchpop.com titled "The Importance of Living Simply: Why Rejecting Consumerism Feeds the Spiritual Life." And you gave a brief summary linked to a Catholic gentleman podcast that discussed that topic. Advertisements have always had that sort of an impact on people, and they discussed that in their podcast. This scarcity mindset, if you will, enticing people to fantasize about what they don't have. Is social media, and in particular Facebook and Instagram, not the ultimate form today of encouraging consumerism, and how do we fight it?
It is, and I think it's important to learn how to, well, first of all, we need to have a really strong prayer life, because if you don't have a prayer life, you're not going to be able to have the grace to fight off the addiction to pick up your phone and to look at everything and scroll through everything in your phone. I'm sure a lot of us struggle with this, because every time you see something pop up on your screen, you want to click on it. But we also have to try to combat that through a solid prayer life and through, being just living in moderation, just with everything, because anything can be used for bad if we don't use it in moderation. And I really like this quote that I believe it was St. Mother Teresa, who said, "Live simply so others can simply live." And you can take that into context with anything, or that can be taken in different ways. But I think it's really important that while we're trying to evangelize on social media, we also need to learn to put it down, because it can also harm our spiritual life if we don't balance it. And rejecting consumerism, going back also to that it all goes hand in hand, because they're constantly trying to sell us stuff on social media, and we're constantly, wanting more, constantly wanting more, because once you scroll through and you get bored of something, you just want something else. Because I believe there have been studies about the chemicals that release in our brain whenever we see new things on social media, like we get a new like or somebody shares our post. It gives us some kind of chemical reaction to where it puts happiness on our brain. But we shouldn't be depending on that all the time, because our ultimate satisfaction is God, and He is the only one that can satisfy us. And we must learn to put the phone down, because otherwise it is so addictive, and it can harm your spiritual life severely. And so we just need to, first of all, have a strong prayer life, ask the Blessed Mother for help in moderating our social media and phone use. And fasting helps too, because that it's a form of fasting. So including fasting and abstaining from your phone at times. Now, of course, we want people on our website, but we also want people to live in simplicity too, like Jesus calls us to do, simplicity and humility too. Because when you're constantly posting stuff about what's going on in your life or posting selfies, that can be a form of pride. There was a priest who told me, I actually heard it secondhand, but a priest who said that being on social media all the time, or posting your latest selfie or telling everybody what you're doing, that can be a form of pride, and it can lead us down a sinful road. So we need to be aware of how often we're on our phones and how often we scroll through social media, while at the same time moderating it, while not missing things, because we definitely want you to see what we post, but we don't want people being so addicted, because anytime you go somewhere, you see everybody on their phones and people aren't interacting, and in a way that can be dangerous, because we're not interacting with people in person, and we also need to spread the gospel in person as well. So that would be my advice, and to ask the Holy Spirit and our Blessed Mother and Jesus to help us mimic his humble heart and his simple heart, because Jesus is simplicity. Because we can't take any of this with us. We cannot take our phones with us when we die. We need to learn to detach.
Beautiful answer, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for that. Debbie, can you comment more on this aspect of prayer? The saints all emphasize the absolute necessity of mental prayer for growing in holiness and attaining self-mastery, so that we don't become slaves to our passions and fleeting desires, and that we may lead purpose-driven lives for Christ. The vast majority of them exhorted the faithful to do this long before the world knew anything about smartphones or things like that. And so is this necessity to gain self-control over our minds not more urgent now than ever? And how do you suggest Catholics using social media in particular, how should they conduct their prayer lives so that we're not being swept away by this addictive technology?
It absolutely is urgent that we practice these virtues like self-control, moderation, prudence when we're using digital media. And like Gus and Jacqueline so beautifully and succinctly said, if you are addicted to social media or your computer, the TV, your tablet, any of these smart devices, you have to turn them off when you pray. I know that there are apps out there that are going to help you pray. But this is the one way that you're going to be able to focus. If you truly have an issue with being able to put it down, caring too much about what is on your devices, checking them constantly, you have to be able to give God the focus and give him your whole heart in the way that we know that he deserves. And in my own life, I spend a huge amount of time on social media by nature of my job, and I have to unplug at the end of the day, because if I don't, then I can't have quiet time in prayer. I can't do spiritual reading. I can't be there for my family and model for my children what it means to practice social media and use of digital media in a healthy way. That quiet time in prayer is when God speaks to us. And no amount of digital media consumption is a substitute for that. And this is coming from somebody who loves watching Mother Angelica. I love I'll put the EWTN app on, and I will listen to her shows on demand while I'm cleaning or while folding laundry, things like that. We love to pray the rosary with Mother Angelica, and those are all good things. But it's, again, no replacement. They don't replace silence. And as far as being able to lead you closer to God, there's only a limited capacity in which digital media can do that. So if you're spending too much time on digital media, then it's taking you away from time that you could be spending in prayer. If you're being pulled away from your responsibilities at home or work because you're always picking up your phone, that's a good indicator that you might be addicted to social media too. And as far as the communion of saints and what they would think about that, I can think of a few saints who would probably start breaking phones in half if they lived during the time of cell phones, just because it is obviously such a big problem. But I want to offer a little bit of encouragement that, Blessed Carlo Acutis, who died in, I think, 2006 at the age of 15, he is a great example of how we can use digital media to bring forth God's kingdom here on earth. He loved playing video games. He was a typical teenage boy, but the difference was that he used his computer programming skills for the glory of God. He built an online database of all the world's confirmed Eucharistic miracles. And even today, over a decade later, I have goosebumps just thinking about it, but he is still impacting the world today by what he did as a teenager on digital media. So we can't discount it completely. We just have to be aware that we need to be exercising virtue. We need to practice fasting and abstaining from social media when necessary. And I do think that as the years go on, we're going to see more saints to be like Carlo, who were able to harness digital media again for God's glory to change the world. Mother Angelica says we are all called to be great saints. Don't miss the opportunity. So make sure you're not missing that opportunity to use social media for good and to advance in holiness.
Well, speaking of soon-to-be saints, Debbie, this last question is something that is particularly relevant to all three of you as parents. First, you, Gus, you're a young husband and father of 5. How are you raising your children differently than parents had to even 15 years ago to prepare them to come of age in this digital world?
I'd like to think I'm an expert on this, but it's changing, it's evolving, and everybody's going to be different. My situation is going to be different than someone else. I homeschool my kids. My wife homeschools them. She does a fantastic job. So we're not going to have the peer influence that kids in school may have. But it's a very interesting quote. Steve Jobs, who was one of the founders of Apple and the former CEO of Apple, was asked at the time what his kids thought of the new iPad. And shockingly, he said, they don't have the iPad. They're not allowed on the iPad. And it was his belief that technology was not good for young kids. And I looked into this, and a lot of executives in Silicon Valley don't allow their kids to use technology. It creates a propensity to addiction. It stifles their development, their creativity. I mean, kids need to be doing things that kids do. They need to be active, they need to be outside, they need to be playing. It's summertime. So, I believe that very much. Now, on the flip side, you don't want to keep them totally sealed off from technology, because when they get it, they're going to go crazy. They're going to go nuts. So I think the key is balance. We really don't let them, they're not allowed on social media. They're young, but, these things are going to change as they get older. But they know how to pick this stuff up very quickly. I'm amazed how quickly they find out how to use the remote. We have an Apple TV, and they know how to use it, and the screens and the menus, and they get on there and they check the weather, and every morning the boys get on there and they got to check the hockey scores and the baseball scores, so they know how to use this. But for the most part, at least as they're younger, it's best to stay off. And to let them be creative, let them develop, and let them to be kids. I mean, I go to restaurants, and we'll see all the kids in the restaurants are being babysat by iPads or iPhones. They're watching cartoons. and they don't learn patience. They don't learn to sit there and communicate with their families. Now, as you get older, as you grow, you know, that it's going to change, and I'll learn that as soon as I get to that point. But right now, that's just kind of where we are.
Great points, Gus. And Jacqueline, we've got like 2 minutes left in the show, but anything else that you wanted to add to the same question about how do you parent kids coming of age in this social media world?
Well, believe it or not, my kids are still really young. My child is only one is 7 and one is 4. So they're a little young to get on social media, and I do not plan on letting them on it for a very long time. I mean, I think it's toxic for little children's minds, and they're not old enough to be able to control what they see. You know, they love, believe it or not, they love the EWTN app, and they've decided to go on the EWTN app on their own to watch the little kid shows. And it just makes my heart so happy that they want to do that. You know, they've been talking about St. Catherine of Siena for the last month or two since it was on the EWTN app. So making sure that they're aware that there are children's shows on those kinds of apps can also help increase to get them to love their faith. But it's also important for them to, like Gus said, to go outside. I'd much rather my kids be outside playing and interacting with each other than on a screen watching TV. So, and they do watch TV, but they have little attention spans, and they are done in like probably 15 minutes. So that's how we parent, and we don't let them watch any new shows unless we've seen it first, most of the time.
Excellent advice, Jacqueline. Fantastic. Thank you, all of you, again, for your work to advance the mission of EWTN. Always good to be with you, Gus Federle, Jacqueline Burkpile, and Debbie Cowden. And thank you for joining us today. We hope you check out all of our social media platforms. We can be found on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter.